Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, starring Ray Fiennes, Alfie Williams, Jack O'Connell, Aaron Kellyman, and Shia Lewis Perry, directed by Nia DaCosta, whom I know a little bit about. I've seen her Candyman remake, thought that was entertaining, and she also did the Marvels for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was okay, not my favorite, but it was entertaining. But I was a little nervous going into this one because I was hoping, because of this director, it would be a little bit sucky. But let's see how this goes. Let's get into the movie. We opened right when 28 Years Later ended, with Spike, returned by Alfie Williams, joining a gang led by Sir Jimmy Crystal, played by Jack O'Connell, where everyone is named Jimmy, like Jimmy Shite, Jimmy Ink, played by the Falcon and the Winter Soldier's Aaron Kellyman, Jimmy Jones, Jimmy Snake, Jimmy Mina, something like that, and Jimmy Fox, as they beat up on Spike until he strikes one of the Jimmys in the nuts, kind of near there, but ow, in the chicken leg, which has got to fucking hurt until he dies because he becomes infected, as Sir Jimmy calls Spike Jimmy, in which there are too many Jimmys, so I ain't going with that for him being his name after the last movie. And they go on a mission to make Jimmys out there, more Jimmys out there, and the opening scene was pretty intense, as is this whole movie. Meanwhile, a man going hunting and getting killed by the infected, led by the Alpha, gets killed by an Alpha named Samson, played by Shia Lewis Perry. And I like the returning characters, even one I'm going to bring up in the next sentence. Dr. Ian Kelson, returned by Ray Fiennes, is an awesome example of portraying a loner badass as Samson encounters him, and Ian strikes him and heals him, and that is one brave motherfucker, as I feared for his life, because Samson is not only infected, but very tall, as he could rip out the motherfucker's neck open. And he gets away from Samson and rests by listening to old school music, and the next day comes, and Ian and Samson approach each other, and Samson understands Ian, which is quite the miracle, as they sit together and Ian talks to him about how he means him no harm. And this is an effective story to a character we met in the last movie, and I'll say barely at best. And their chemistry was pretty well done. Miraculously, Ian wakes up without his head getting ripped off by Samson because of a cure he had for Samson. And day by day goes by, and Ian teaches Samson to dance, which was an interesting choice for a zombie flick. And I was getting vibes of Warm Bodies, which I reviewed a while ago, but this isn't as sweet. This is a bit rougher to watch than that movie, in my opinion. But when the zombie turns into a human again, you know what I mean by that? And in that movie, we move on to a family led by Kathy, Jono, and Tom hunting to the infected, as Jono becomes the infected while Kathy and Tom gets back to their homes, or their home, excuse me, and see George has company, which happens to be the Jimmys, while they're talking about the Teletubbies, which is something Sir Jimmy watched as a young kid while Spike is with them, and they watch Mia, I think is her name, dancing like the Teletubbies until they started to attack the homeowners and trap them to a farmhouse to kill them, as Kathy gets away. And the cinematography was very well shot, and the last movie is well made, except for the shaky cam up close. I'll say stop doing that. I'm just gonna say that now. Ian dances while Samson watches him dance, and Jimmy Ink sees Ian with an infected Samson, believing he's a devil of some kind, while the other Jimmys torture George and Tom and others, and kills George and the others, but leave Tom alive so he could fight Jemima. Meanwhile, Spike vomits during the killing, and Jimmy Ink talks some sense into Spike, as he doesn't want to have anything to do with the Jimmys, and the torture scene was graphic, while Ian confesses to Samson he has very little of that medicine he gives him left, and he has 2 more weeks until there's no more, and almost injects Samson with death until he says the moon. and he stares at it. And this was an interesting choice, as this movie is full of interesting choices. Jimmy's kill all the people in the house except for Tom, while Spike is still throwing up. And like I said, and he fights Jemima and with knives, well, until Jemima is killed off by Kathy coming in and fights off the Jimmies while killing off Tom, who burns the farmhouse and kills a Jimmy. Well, Jimmy, Ink, and Spike wait outside the farmhouse, and Sir Jimmy tells Spike to go after Kathy as he tries to betray them and go with Kathy, but Kathy beats up Spike and escapes. And can I just say, damn, this movie is fucking intense. Sir Jimmy is upset, and Spike betraying Jimmy, the Jimmies, excuse me, and almost cuts his face off. But Jimmy Ink says she found the old neck, which is the devil character that she saw earlier with Ray Fiennes in the Bone Temple, and Sir Jimmy goes with it, and they go to the Bone Temple. And I like the song choices throughout the movie as Samson turns into a normal human being as he walks away, while the Jimmies see Ian as the old Nick, with Sir Jimmy planning on approaching Ian and have a chat with him, and the dialogue was tremendous from start to finish. Sir Jimmy approaches Ian and have their talk all day long and asks him if the other Jimmies can meet him, while the Jimmies wait tight with Spike, and he says to Jimmy Ink he might not be the one to fuck with, as this is great acting, and this might be director Nia DaCosta's best film, as I reviewed The Marvels, which was alright, like I said, and I did see the remake of Candyman, and thought that was entertaining again, like I said, but both not great movies, and like I said, this is her best movie in my opinion, from what I've seen of hers, I'll say at best. Sir Jimmy makes some rules about meeting Ian while talking to him, for example, as Ian wants to give Samson his cure before Ian gets killed the next day, and Spike tries to escape, but eventually Jimmy Ink finds him escaping, as does an infected, which scared me in my second viewing, which is a great thing for a horror film, even a zombie film. And one of the Jimmies almost kills Spike, but Jimmy Ink kills the motherfucker and tells him to stick with her, and they'll go far away. And Samson becomes human again, and the infected notice it. And Samson gets attacked by the infected because he turned into a human again, with him thinking how bad a kid, like thinking about how bad a kid riding a train saying he doesn't have a ticket. And I'm thinking, wow, this movie is intense, but it's incredible for a zombie movie about the infected, as Samson fights his way out of it while never turning back into an infected, which is incredible, while he's a strong motherfucker too. And kudos to the actor, Shia Lewis Perry, with the body language of portraying Samson. Ian gets set up to fight the Jimmies off as nighttime comes, and gets prepared by fire and acts like Old Neck by using some scary rock music to torment the Jimmies from killing him. And this is one of the greatest scenes in not only the series but in cinema, as it's frightening, and Samson awakens and walks to the Bone Temple while the Jimmies are rocking out to the music until it stops, and Ian tells them to approach him and curses them with the priest's words and commands them to continue their mission. The fingers must obey Sir Jimmy and grow the fingers. And at this point, I'm terrified by these shots, as it works so well. Ian recognizes Spike and removes his mask, and has one more command for Sir Jimmy to hang himself on the cross like Christ did back in the day. And as Sir Jimmy stabs Ian and calls him a fraud and calls himself Satan, and Spike and Jimmy Ink kill the remaining Jimmy and the remaining Jimmies, as Spike tells Jimmy Ink he knows Ian, and they put Sir Jimmy on the cross, and eventually leaves as Jimmy Ink tells Spike her real name is Kelly, as Samson comes in to thank Ian as he dies. And the movie isn't quite over yet, while Sir Jimmy was hanging upside down, as we get one more scene of Jim, returned by Cillian Murphy from the first movie, and someone whom I believe is his daughter Sam, as he does her history homework until they hear Spike and Kelly being chased by the infected, and that chilling music going on the credits roll. I'm hungry for another movie with these characters, but is it as good as 28 Days, Weeks, and Years Later? Let's talk about it in a rating. I'll give this movie a 8.5 out of 10. The opening sequence was a grabber, and I like the returning characters, for example, Ray Fiennes, as I relate with this character. Despite I was afraid for his life because of, first of all, he dealt with Samson, who is infected, and heals him as the character and actor is very tall, as he also deals with the Jimmies at the end of the movie. And I was afraid for his life this whole movie. And that was an effective story of this character we sort of met in the last movie. And the chemistry between Ian and Samson is pretty well done, and I liked the returning with him after the last movie. The cinematography was well shot, as this movie is well made, except for the up close shots, and it makes a lot of interesting choices from start to finish. Like the shot with the cameo by Cillian Murphy and his character's daughter and the end of the movie, and gives us the same haunting score from the first two movies, which was missing from the last movie. And the music scenes with Ray Fiennes acting like the devil to Sir Jimmy was one of the greatest scenes I've seen, and not only in this series but in cinema. This is better than 28 Weeks and 28 Years Later, but not quite as good as 28 Days Later, as I did review those movies before. But this is a solid recommendation for this movie, and can I just say, damn, this movie is fucking intense. As I like the music choices throughout the movie, as the dialogue was tremendous from start to finish, and the movie is intense but incredible for a movie about the infected, and at the end of the day, it's a solid film. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, for coming back to the 28 Days, Weeks, Years Later series. And until we come back to Jim. Sorry, I'm trying to do an effective. That's not cool. Good night, everyone.